All right, we are back. This is Wednesday night, and we are still here in Miami. Wrapping up consensus tomorrow. Lots of good people here. I said this about Bitcoin Vegas and XRP Vegas, but I would just reiterate it here. If you're going to conferences right now, I think it's valuable. We've been to consensus the past 4 years. Actually, 2023 was our first one. But as cycles kind of progress and there's hype in the market and people are excited about things, you have, it's kind of frothy, right? There's a lot of people that go to these conferences. They're excited about the industry. They're trying to do things. They're trying to put things out there. When you're in a bear market, it's a very different vibe. There are a lot less people at these conferences, but they are very quality people. They're the people that are hardy. They have grit. They are doing something that's real most of the time. They have an understanding of, like how to actually do something in the ecosystem. And they're surviving through the bear market. So if you're feeling that way, if your sentiment is down, your portfolio is down, and you're, just feeling not quite as jovial as you were during the bull market in late 25 and kind of the middle of 26, it's okay. This is normal. It's all part of everything that's going on, and I think it's going to turn around in the very near future. So we're going to talk about the macro. We're going to talk about all the things on the regulatory side, all the other things that are happening in the market, and then we'll jump into the questions like we always do. So again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday night to come hang out with me and ask great questions. Something I saw yesterday that I found very interesting: Coinbase has cut 14% of their staff using AI. It's interesting timing on that. You've also seen a huge reduction in other exchanges' headcount during the bear market here. They're not growing headcount; they're reducing headcount on the premise that they're using AI to replace these jobs. I don't know about Coinbase, and I don't know about these exchanges on what they're actually automating in order to be able to reduce that much headcount. Maybe it's an excuse to be able to let people go and like drive down costs because they're not making as much money. Potentially. Again, I don't know what their financials are. If they're a publicly traded company, then obviously, you'd be able to look at that, and then quarter over quarter earnings, you could see that there was, a significant reduction or loss in profits that they were generating. So we'll have to wait to see what we get in Q2 for the earnings on those companies. But they could also be a play to be able to push their stock price up, right? So you had Block cut like 25% of their staff on the premise that they were going to be, automating systems using AI, and they saw their stock jump 20% in a single day. I don't know if that's the same play that these other companies are running, if it's still working or not. I haven't looked at Coinbase stock. We did see a new all-time high for the S&P 500 today, which is very much looking like a blow-off top to me. I don't know how we go much higher than here. I think the valuations are at the far, far end of the extended range. PE ratios at some companies are 25, 26. The S&P itself is at that level. Some of the AI stocks, like, if you look at infrastructure stuff like NVIDIA, they're still in an okay range. They're at like 19 on their PE ratio. But I would argue that the stock market is significantly overvalued at the current price points that are out there, and it's not sustainable for an extended period of time. I do believe that we're going to see a significant pullback in the stock market that's going to be exacerbated by the reverse carry trade, or even brought on by the reverse carry trade unwinding. So that kind of leads into some of the other macro that's going on. We've seen the Bank of Japan intervene at least 4 times in the last few days here of this week. Not good. The IMF will step in after 6 interventions on the yen and start very much regulating the exchange rate for the yen. And they don't want that. So they're really backed up against a corner here. They really have maybe 2 more times that they can step in and intervene in the market before the IMF kind of steps in and takes control of the situation. I think that they're still going to raise interest rates there in Japan, and that is what's going to, drive the reverse carry trade or the Japanese carry trade, however you want to call it, to unwind globally. It'll be a credit crisis. It'll be a liquidity crisis. And we know what the plan is when that plays out. So excited about that, which is unusual. Like if you didn't know that there was a plan in the background and you weren't invested in that, you probably have, an apprehension to being excited about that, to see your stock portfolio plummet 30 to 50%, the bond market have volatility like it has. Monday, again, just kind of circling back to that, we saw some significant volatility in the bond market. Multiple people, dumping U.S. Treasuries and moving the yield significantly here in the U.S. And also in Japan. So I think we're still on the precipice of things kind of playing out here. The Bank of Japan has also come out and said that they're going to, I don't know if it was referring to meeting minutes for the monetary policy meetings, or if they're allowing themselves to kind of step in as needed to be able to manage the market and the risk associated, that the yen currently has. I tend to believe the statement leans toward the latter, but we'll see if that's the case or not. Emergency meetings for the Bank of Japan have never been a thing. It's never happened. The Fed has obviously done that a couple different times in our history and moved monetary policy significantly that's not factored into the market. And obviously we see, the market's always forward looking. It's looking forward for the next 6 months, and people are projecting things based on the information that they currently have at hand. So whatever they believe the market's going to do over the next 6-month period is how they're buying and positioning themselves. Again, with the S&P being where it's at, significantly overvalued, really everything, because of the M2 money supply and the inflation that we've seen in our economy here domestically and abroad. Pretty much every currency has been inflated over the past 5 years. Costs have significantly gone up for those that live in those regions. Now, depending on, where you go, I was actually talking with our CMO about this earlier. He lived for a little while in Japan, and when he was there, it was 80 yen per $1 US. If you went now and things remained similar cost, which I would expect that they would, it'd be up some, but not significant. Your dollar goes a long way. If you haven't traveled the world, I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to do so. We went to Turkey for my hair transplant. It's going to be, it's almost 2 years since I got the hair transplant. But when we went in 2024, you could get a Coke for like 30 cents there in Turkey. I don't remember the last time I was able to buy a Coke for 30 cents. It doesn't matter where I buy a Coke at, if it's out of a machine or if it's at a restaurant. I don't think in my entire lifetime that a Diet Coke or Coke has been 30 cents. But that's because of the strength of the US dollar in comparison to the Turkish lira, right? If you have a stronger currency and you travel and you go abroad, you could go to Japan right now and you would be doing pretty well if the majority of your wealth was denominated in dollars. So thinking about that, if you're going to travel and you do want to experience, different cultures and places, you might want to look at the exchange rate and then kind of plan where you want to go based on that, because your dollars do go a lot further in other economies. But back to, the things that are at hand here. Still waiting on the Bank of Japan to come out and raise interest rates. They're facing significant inflation in their economy. We've seen them intervene in the oil market. Also, they're shorting oil. We've seen that drop back down to 15,000 yen per barrel. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that very long. I think that could actually cause a short squeeze in the market, and we could see oil push much, much higher. We've continued to see that climb here in the U.S. Brent and crude both up significantly, continuing to push higher because the strait is, still shut down. So again, like I've said many, many times, I feel like they're backing themselves into a corner, and they really don't have much runway left. Now that they have intervened 4 times at a minimum, I saw another big dip in the yen versus the USD a little bit earlier this evening. I don't know if that was them intervening or not, but if it was, that would be 5 times. And they only get 6 before the IMF steps in here. So we'll see what actually ends up transpiring. I do believe that they are going to have to raise interest rates in order to keep the IMF from having to step in and, kind of take control of what's going on over there. So, like I mentioned, if they already did a fifth time, they're really out of runway. They're the only other option that they're going to have instead of jumping U.S. Treasuries or buying back bonds. They can't really inflate their currency because they're already under inflation, so they can't print yen to be able to buy back those bonds. They got to raise interest rates. Like, that's the last card that they have left on the table to be able to navigate this situation. So we'll see if that's in the near future. I'm feeling good about May. Feels like a lot of things could move here in a very short period of time with how things are currently sat in the macro. But maybe there's something I'm missing, right? Like, I've been off on time frames before, so just give me some grace. I'm just trying to relay to you guys what's actually going on so that you're aware of those things and you're able to prepare yourself. But at the same time, I don't know everything. I'm not the end all be all. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Probably a good time for my disclaimer, which I didn't do Monday, and I'm probably going to hear from my compliance team on. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always consult with a financial advisor, a CPA, or an attorney before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. And if you need those people, we would love to provide them for you. We do have the people that have all those credentials and licenses at Digital Ascension Group in order to be able to provide those services. And again, anything shared here are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or its subsidiaries. So now that we have the disclaimer out of the way, we can go ahead and jump into the questions. And again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to come hang out with me. Please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm in the channel, and any support is much appreciated. Colin, my man, first one of the night, he says, "Hey, Jake, does it not seem strange that the chosen one for the new financial system has to rely on world events to increase in price?" I don't think so at all. It's problem, reaction, solution, right? That's the Hegelian dialectic. And you don't want to let a good crisis go to waste. And if you can orchestrate that crisis in order to be able to bring in whatever you need to be able to prevent or navigate that situation, be ideal. And the U.S. government has been running currency wars for the past couple decades. They know that this is coming. It's not like it's a pattern that hasn't happened throughout history. Any global reserve currency over the last 500 years have had the same situation happen. They offshore their manufacturing, they hollow out all of that. They offshore the inflation through that mechanism. They continue to devalue the currency and inflate it over time, and eventually it collapses. And then somebody else, becomes the economic superpower that steps in. It's a cycle that's literally goes back to Rome, right? So if you look at the Roman coins that they originally had, they were, gold, silver, bullion, and then they would bring in other metals and dilute those over time, even though, to the public, they look the same, just like our coins. We haven't had copper in our pennies since I want to say it was like the late 1960s, or maybe even earlier than that they started removing the copper from the pennies. It's actually so expensive to produce pennies right now. It costs them like 2-point-something cents to make a penny. They're talking about taking pennies out of circulation because it's actually a cost for them to produce the coin. And if you have currency, from the 1960s or earlier, it does have a decent amount of precious metals in it. There are people, at silver and coin shops that will sell you dimes and nickels and even quarters that were prior to 1964, especially the 1940s. They were all still made with, those precious metals. So if you find one and you see those dates on it, it's actually worth a lot more than the face value of that coin. But again, this has happened over and over in history. If you've read Ray Dalio's book, Cycles, Currency Cycles, or if you've, another good book that he's written is Principles, I would encourage everybody to read those. Bridgewater is fantastic. They've done very well over a period of time. They do great diversification and uncorrelated risk in their strategy. They run that corporation as an meritocracy, which is also unique. value proposition that most companies don't utilize. So, shout out to Ray Dalio. He'll never watch this, but I've learned a lot from him. And again, encourage you guys to read those books if you want to understand currency cycles. Another good one is The Fourth Turning. It talks about socioeconomics and how that tends to coincide, the cycles in that, with currency cycles and the change in monetary regime globally. So anyway, they've been wargaming this for a long time. They knew that it was coming. And Jim Rickards actually talked about the reverse carry trade and an ICE 9 event occurring back in 2014 when he was consulting for the U.S. government. And that is where, a portion of my theory came from. He actually talked about a certain strait being shut down. He talked about the Strait of Gibraltar. It was the Strait of Hormuz. In my original video that I put out for the domino theory, I talked about the Strait of Gibraltar. And then since then, obviously, I changed that over to the Strait of Hormuz. And then here we are in that exact scenario where everything plays out in the way that he, talked about with the U.S. government more than a decade ago. So when you say, that the chosen one has to have real world events to see price appreciation, I think that's exactly how they would bring this in. If they just reprice something like they did with gold, there's often opposition by the public, right? When they confiscated gold from the U.S. public in 1933, and then 6 months later revalued it from $20 to $35 an ounce, there was a lot of people very pissed off about that because they got their gold taken from them. So any instance where there's a revaluation by a government body or a global body like the IMF or the BIS, probably going to be some people pretty pissed off about that. So in order to be able to orchestrate liquidity moving into an asset, this would be a much better way and a narrative for the public to be able to digest that and understand it versus, they just come out and change the price of things. So I know that there's other people that talk about that. The BIS could absolutely come out and do that, which is the Bank of International Settlements. But have a very strong conviction that they are going to orchestrate these events globally. You're already kind of seeing it. And that will lead to the price appreciation for XRP for them to be able to use it. All right. We got Spark of Light. That's a cool name. They say, hey, Jake, appreciate you. Smoke. It says research shows reverse carry trade is overblown. Can't happen at scale, people think. Yen strengthening, BOJ managing, and CT exposure is much less. Carry trade exposure is much less than it was. Your facts. Smoke is extremely intelligent. He does a fantastic job breaking down real world documents and doing hardcore research. I have a lot of respect for that account and that gentleman over there on Twitter. However, everybody's got their own opinion on things. I believe that people have just continued to lever up. So we did see some of it unwind. We saw about $2 trillion of the reverse carry trade unwind on August, I think it was 14th of 2024. It was a Sunday evening. I remember it very well because I was like, oh, this is it. Like, it's happening. But they didn't have stablecoin regulation in place to be able to stabilize the bond market. And so they were able to kick the can a little bit further, held rates, to make sure that things continued on the path that they were. And now that we have stablecoin regulation here in the US through the Genius Act, and then we have the OCC coming out with their guidance around banks using that information and being able to issue stablecoins, now's the right time for them to be able to allow that to unwind at scale in order to be able to deleverage the system, reprice everything, and get into a sustainable system to be able to move forward from here and offset the debt. So Smoke, like I said, very intelligent. I have a different opinion on this than he does, obviously. I believe that after that unwind happened, people re-levered. And I think that there's somewhere between 10 and $14 trillion that's levered from the Bank of Japan that's been put to work in different markets globally, including the crypto market, that will basically be sucked out when this reverse carry trade unwinds at scale. So again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Super sharp individual, probably very educated on this topic in order to be able to form an opinion and put it out there publicly. But we do differ on our thoughts on this. Jeff, appreciate the super chat, my man. He says, "Hi, I'm at Consensus and haven't run into you. All the talk about every panel in stable coins, including cross border, XRP noticeably absent. Your thoughts? Where can I find you?" I've been walking around the conference. There's been multiple people that have stopped me and asked for pictures, and again, I'm just a normal dude. I'm happy if people want to take photos. Happy to take time and stop and have a conversation and learn a little bit about them. But yeah, XRP Ripple has a booth here. I don't know if you went to their booth or not. They also have a very nice billboard that I took a photo in front of that says "Don't fold XRP." I don't think that it's absent at all. However, I would say, with Hedera's announcement, a lot of people are, thinking that maybe that they're going to have a DEX that alleviates the need for a decentralized bridge asset to be able to trade between counterparties. I don't believe so. I do believe that there needs to be liquidity pools, and other things in order for them to be able to facilitate the transfer of stablecoins at scale between different counterparties, and remove counterparty risk or the need for Nostro Vostro accounts to be able to pre-fund those accounts with the stablecoins from a counterparty bank to be able to settle with each other. They'd much prefer not to have to hold that capital idle and be able to put it to work and do other things with it instead of, funding those accounts at other banks. So I think that there's still a significant need for a DEX and a decentralized bridge between all of these stablecoins that are going to be issued. And I, again, think that XRP sits uniquely in that position to be able to facilitate that. What's going on, brother? He says, Mega Legend. What will be approximately maximum price of Hash, Flare, and Ondo in December of 2025? I have no idea, my man. It's all dependent on utility of those networks and what adoption we see. There's a rumor. This is just a rumor that I heard, okay? And it's probably not even true. But somebody was out there touting that Ripple is looking at an acquisition of Ondo. That would be wild to see that happen. When I was at the Ondo Summit in New York earlier this year, they did say that they settle through two separate marketplaces back through the XRPL. They glanced over that slide very quickly when they were talking about it, but it was very interesting to see that. And them on stage presenting it, we settle through the XRPL for tokenized treasuries and other products that we do. So maybe there's some merit to that rumor. I don't know at all. Again, it's just hearsay, saw it on Twitter, figured I'd share it, but would be a very unique and interesting acquisition if Ripple were to pull that off. So back to the price predictions. Again, I'm throwing stuff against a wall here. I have no clue. It's all based on, utility of these networks and the adoption that we see. I think all three of them could do very well. My guess, if I just had to give you a visceral response, would be higher than what they are today. And I know you want like numbers so that you can map stuff out. Go talk with a financial advisor, war game it, do some research and try to figure out, total addressable market cap, what percentage of that total market cap you think that they could capture in that period of time based on how things are progressing. And then you could work back to a number for what you believe those price points will be. All right. We got Bush Wookie. Interesting name. They say, appreciate all that you do and your team. Thank you so very much. Thank you, man. Appreciate the kind words in the super chat. And lots of really good questions tonight. We got Mr. Rick Johnson. Mr. Johnson. He says, my boss is the biggest not so good person. He literally does not care about anything, utterly rude, mean grouch, price appreciation, move your butt. I'm sorry to hear that. So I've worked for really good managers over the years, and I've worked for other people that just same deal, did not care about me, didn't want me to succeed, unhappy that they were even at the job, and morale at those jobs was not good. I tried to take those experiences and then apply them to my life and how we manage our corporation and our company. I want people to be excited to come to work here. I want them to feel valued. I want them to, and they are valued, right? Like I want them to really be valued by the company. I want to know about their kids and their family. I want to have, good conversations with people. I want to make sure that they're doing okay personally. And we also want to like do cool stuff for people. So we just had everybody here in Miami, all of our C-suite flew in and, had a big powwow. We've been going to multiple events. We kind of divide and conquer while we've been here. We tried to do a couple offsites or on-sites, however you want to say it, for the corporation twice a year, so that everybody feels included. They get to know each other, especially in a remote paradigm. It's difficult to build that camaraderie like you would if everybody came into an office. So, I'm very intentional about how we build the culture here and how I show up for all of our employees. My job is to make sure that they have the resources to be successful in their position. At the end of the day, that's what I'm here to do. We hired somebody because of their expertise and their understanding so that they could execute and do a job. I don't like to micromanage people. Everybody does need to be managed a little bit differently. I try to hire people that will chase the carrot like myself. But there are people that do need a swift boot in the ass every once in a while in order to stay motivated and keep, doing what they need to do. Those people don't last very long in the environment that we've curated and the culture that we have. So, everybody has a different style of management. I'm not somebody that we have core values when you're brought on. We share those with everybody. We talk about them at all of our meetings. And we try to, align ourselves with those in every outcome or circumstance and how we work with our employees and our clients. So I'm sorry to hear that that's not the case at your occupation. And hopefully, like you said, we see some price appreciation in the near future and you can walk away from that. Nicole, she says, Guru, you're a fan of XDC. For SPC citing its speed and low cost. It doesn't, however, feature in the top RWA blockchain tables, supposedly due to its assets being primarily managed. Is this cause for concern, adoption, or success? So I literally sat down today with one of the gentlemen from XDC and had some conversations around things. They have USD on their network now. And I think that they are going to try to double down on payments to build liquidity in that ecosystem in the token, and then parlay that, just like Ripple has, into other products and solutions later on. So I think that's their main focus in the short term. I would expect to see other stablecoins issued on XDC. I've talked about in the past that XRP is the primary second settlement mechanism for R3 and Corda. However, they can utilize Solana, they can use XDC, they've run pilots with multiple other people. And you do need fail safes and backup systems in case you can't execute because of a certain amount of volume or cost on a certain network. So as the XRPL scales, if there is a pause in the network or something, you could route that liquidity some other way, XDC may be the fallback on that. For trade finance, I think it's fantastically positioned. Any contract that has value, I think, could be issued on XDC. So bonds may end up on XDC. Obviously, Ondo's done a really good job of that up to this point. And I think they'll continue to be successful in that capacity. But, gold warrants from Comtech are on XDC. So it's a value, it's a voucher for the underlying gold. You can exchange that in Dubai at multiple gold shops for the gold bullion that they have there or the jewelry. There's, many other applications. I've been to their office in Dubai for XDC. I've spoken with Ritesh on a panel, know those guys well. And I like their network. I don't think that there's a whole lot in the way of adoption for them. I do think that it'll be a bit delayed and be more gradual over time until it is exponential when they do see big partnerships and implementation of their blockchain at scale in certain applications. But I'm a bull on XDC. I think that it's going to be around and be used for sure. And, again, I could possibly be biased on that. I bought it at 0.03 of a penny when it was an ERC20 token and you had to buy Ethereum and send it to a weird wallet in order to be able to even get it. Was not listed on any exchanges or anywhere else. So again, just take it with a grain of salt. But I really like that blockchain. I think that they're going to see a lot of success when it comes to the tokenization of notes and contracts that have value. 7U, they say, can you explain the risk with the yield product? Is it like loss of 10 to 15%? Or is your entire XRP get lost? Just trying to understand. Thank you. So we don't have a yield product currently, which ails me to no end. I can guarantee you that it is our highest priority, and we are working every single day, running at it as hard as we can. A lot of the problem with the yield product as we want it structured to be able to mitigate risk and meet compliance standards and do everything the right way as a fiduciary falls back to the infrastructure that we currently have for wealth management in the digital asset space. These players and custodians that are out here did not build it. They've built infrastructure to be able to issue financial products that hold the underlying asset in an omnibus account. And an SMA infrastructure has never been a thing in crypto, single managed accounts. So, we are looking to facilitate that. We have the first ever SMA product that's ever been launched. We did that with Fidelity and one of our sub-advisors where it's a Bitcoin strategy. So if you have at least $500,000 in Bitcoin, we democratize access to that normally in order to be able to approach that manager and get ability to participate in this opportunity to generate more Bitcoin. You would have had to have $15-20 million. We bring that down to $500,000, and we want to continue to further democratize access to these institutional grade products for high net worth individuals and our clients at Digital Wealth Partners. But when it comes to the yield product, you're probably referring to the funds that we have. So what they do is we hold the asset in institutional custody. We reflect that value off exchange after you've subscribed to the fund product that we have. It's a securities offering. It's fully regulated here in the US. We finally finished our audit. And so all of the audited financials went out to everybody on 3/30, which was the deadline for that, or 4/30. It was 4/30, just a few days ago. So excited to have that under our belt and done for the first time ever. Where we're running these strategies and the partners that we have, has never been a U.S. audit done on them. We're providing ways for people to get access to these institutional products that have been offshore and kind of out of the sight of the U.S. investor for a long time, and doing it in a completely compliant way, which is fantastic. They're market neutral strategies. So, by reflecting it off exchange, we mitigate counterparty risk. If one of the exchanges that's, the trading's going on goes under, none of those assets are called away. They're held on our side of the fence. The line of margin that we get against the assets, they'll issue like 80 to 100% LTV, depending on the partner that we have. And with that, we only ever trade like 40, 50, 60% of that line of margin. So on 10/10, when that happened, we had no assets called away. It worked perfect. Which was that liquidation was 9 times larger than any other liquidation, even FTX, that's occurred in crypto in the past. So for us to be able to perform under those circumstances, I felt very good about that. I don't want to say I was concerned because we, structured it the right way, but to see it perform, in action was very nice to see. So mitigated counterparty risk, mitigated volatility risk. The only thing, and this has, all of these fund managers that we've been talking to have underperformed over the past 6-12 months because of market conditions and thin liquidity and less volume. That's coming back, right? And we've pivoted some of the strategies that we use, whether that's derivatives or perps or algorithmic trading or arbitrage. The sub-advisors that we use to manage the strategies, and then kind of parlay that depending on what's going to be working in the market. They performed well over the last month. I think that they'll continue good performance over this quarter because we've recalibrated the strategies. But that's the only risk, right? So if the strategy underperforms for a quarter, we can defer those losses, and we believe that the market's going to turn around and we'll be able to change the strategy and make the money back. But but you don't lose XRP until you move your money out of the fund, right? So until you actually withdraw your stuff, at that point, we have to strike NAV and do what we need to do in order to be able to get people their stuff back. We do have, quarterly redemptions on the funds. The yield product that we're going to be rolling out in the near future, hopefully, will have monthly payouts. It'll probably still be at least starting off quarterly redemptions, and then we'll move that back as we can. If we're operating in DeFi and other stuff, there's still going to be parameters around the compliance and the way that we, structure everything. So not going to be just you throw it in DeFi protocol and you can pull it out anytime. I would love to get there. I think once we tokenize the products that we have, and we have, some type of receipt token or something else that, automatically extracts the NAV all the time and you can see your gains or losses. I think people would love that in their account. We're working on those things. Because right now people get the returns quarterly, just like any other private fund would be. But in crypto, that's like an eternity for most people because they're used to seeing, well, I can look at my, price feed anytime and see where my asset is, or I can put it in this DeFi protocol and see how much I've made in this period of time. Traditional funds don't work that way. There's so many different layers that are currently set up as frictions in the financial system that things remain illiquid, and also the reporting on them is just significantly less. And especially at scale, like we have 700 LPs in the products that we offer. And so in order to be able to reconcile that and, do the financials on it and pay the distributions and everything else, it's very cumbersome in the current circumstances that we have. But again, as we add and build out the infrastructure that we need, all of those frictions should go away over time. So that's not really what you asked. So is the loss like 10 or 15%? We work with our financial advisors. They work with our clients to help them navigate that risk and see what the risk profile is. Most of our clients, there's some of our clients that at the opposition of the advisors did put the majority, or if not all, of their XRP to work in the products. Again, everybody has their own MO and their own goals, and they get to drive their financial life. And even if it's at the opposition to the financial advisors, we will still do what's asked. It's just documented that they did not recommend that. But yeah, that, the ideal situation is we're mitigating downside risk. That's why we trade in market neutral strategies. And that would be kind of the lower bound, the range that you mentioned there, 5 to 10% that we would be willing to tolerate in these strategies. So again, I rambled on there. Don't know if it exactly answered your question, but hopefully you have a better idea of what we're dealing with and how we do what we do. Mike, my man, he says, legend, is the MFO punishing spectators for short yen Golden Week holidays? The yen had 2 big dips, short squeeze, potentially third on Friday. Japan is buying back a lot of yen, massive global margin call soon, maybe. So that's what I was talking about. They've intervened at least 4 times in the currency market, and they only get 6. So if maybe they did one more tonight, I don't know. If they did the 5th one, if they've done the 5th one, the only option is they have to raise interest rates at this point in order to be able to save their currency. So if we do see the yen get back to 160, 161, 162 versus the US dollar, the Bank of Japan is going to have to act. Oh man, that's another question. He says, hey, Jake, do you still think XRP will upload a New Year's? Not sure your question. I searched for New Year's Eve celebrations this May and June and couldn't find any. Can you give us new clues? Please have mercy on us. Put on your tinfoil hat. You could consider June 1st a New Year's of some kind, if you wanted to put it that way. April Fools used to be the New Year's before. It was like the 1500s or 1600s when they changed that. There's lots of different calendars out there. So again, I don't know which one's the calendar that the Riddles use. I have no idea. I think that they could use multiple calendars in the way that they've structured everything, and it's a pigpen cipher. So all that being said, I do think that May is a pivotal month. I'm watching May, June, July. These are the 3 months of the year that I think we're going to see significant changes happen to the financial system, and alongside that, the cryptocurrency market as well. Approximately 2030 price of those assets. I mean, you guys know my price prediction on XRP. I think 2030, 2032, you could easily see a $100,000 XRP. I think that's very reasonable based on the current circumstances and the adoption rate and the tokenization of different financial products and markets over that duration. HBAR, big news from HBAR this week at HederaCon. Cross-chain interoperability and atomic settlement and swaps being brought to that network with the players that are on the council. Significant traction there. I think you could see easily a 3 to 4 digit HBAR by 2030, if not sooner. XDC, 2 to 3 digits, again, based on certain adoption curve and the implementation of that network in different capacities or different markets. Flare, probably same range. I played golf this morning with Flare, or one of the people on their team. Again, I think that they're going to have significant adoption because of the way that they've structured their product and network and the wrapping of certain assets. So the more Flare that's locked up, the less that there's out there circulating. You pay fees in Flare on the network. There's demand for that token. I could see easily 2 to 4 digits. That one's a wide range, right? Because again, I don't know what we're going to see as far as the adoption of it and implementation, but I would love to see it, just like everybody else, at significantly higher prices, under a penny right now. So that and hash, both, I think, could see significantly more adoption and higher prices by the end of the year. Quant, Overledger. So you pay fees for Overledger to be able to participate in that ecosystem using Quant. It doesn't actually settle value. There are a lot of people that have touted Quant going to $1 million. I don't see that. I think that you could see a $10,000 Quant if you saw full-scale adoption of Overledger in every capacity by 2030. I think it'll probably still be less than that if I'm being realistic about it. So I don't know if you wanted specific prices, but I gave good ranges there. And again, nothing here is financial advice. These are just my opinions, and you should always consult with a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. Infinite Growth XRP says, I'm a DWP client in your income fund. When will I get the results from Q1? When will it pay out? Also, what kind of volume from the DTCC will we see XRP? Good questions. So they, again, finalized the audit and everything. They've been working diligently to get that done over the past 3 months. Q1 results should come out next week. Our CEO is traveling this week, and I know that they're working with Tony, who's our main advisor on the fund, to put together the webinars and the results from the past quarter. And kind of give you guys maybe a preview of how they've done this quarter as well. So you should get the invite for that in the next 7 days. And then the payouts are always, ideally within 30 days of the end of the quarter. So if there weren't any payouts on the fund or the product that you're participating in, it's likely that you will hear about that on the webinar and why. So when it comes to the volume on the DTCC for XRP, I mean, current volumes, right now they settle T+1 between the clearinghouses and the brokers. And, until they move to real-time settlement, the volume itself, right, as it sits now, would be substantial enough to push XRP's price. Well, it would need to be a significantly higher price in order to facilitate the settlement of that volume. Back into the stock market sells, somewhere between $4 and $6 trillion a day, similar to Swift, $5 trillion a day. Significant volume, right? So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. What kind of volume from DTCC will XRP see? I think we'll see all of it. I think that when they move to Project Ion and real-time settlement, XRP will be used in that capacity to settle all the transactions on the back end of the stock market 100%. Off-Grid Hero, good to see you. They say DTCC's tokenized July uses XRP, high price needed. So I think this is a misconception that a lot of people have. You could have back-end settlement of the stock market and not have those assets tokenized on the same network. Now, you would get tangential benefits if they were. Larry Fink has talked about this. He does believe that there's going to be one unified blockchain on the back end for settlement and potentially tokenization of real-world assets. That's a lot of dependency on one network. So you would need something that's never been down, been operating for a long time, been battle tested. I can only really think of one of those. The multi-purpose token, which is an amendment on the XRPL, allows for voting rights and other things, even though those tokens are fungible with other ones, just like stocks would be. You might have different rights or governance built into those tokens, which is great for that application if they chose to tokenize stocks on the XRPL. You've got a lot of networks tokenizing stocks. I think that each exchange is probably going to choose which network they want to partner with to be able to facilitate that. And then you're going to have Chainlink and CCIP. You're also going to have Axelar, and you're going to have Wormhole that allow everything to settle back to the XRPL and settle those transactions between the clearinghouse and the brokers. So, again, just my 2 cents on that. But I feel confident that that's going to be the outcome. Another good question. He says, hey, Legend, will the final boss be this Saturday? Monday is the 11th, the magic number. Do you know Salute and Doger on their famous videos? And lastly, do you think BlackRock would release its XRP ETF on a Friday or a Monday? I think it's likely that BlackRock would probably roll their ETF out on a bookend of a week. That makes a lot of sense. We've seen that with other, ETF launches as well. I remember the Monday that somebody hacked the SEC and said that they approved the Bitcoin ETFs. And then it was Tuesday when they actually made that announcement on 1/10, January of 2024. I am familiar with Doger's work over there on Twitter. He has some very interesting videos that he's made over the years. And there's some interesting timestamps on when certain things happen in those videos that correlate to some of the riddles and stuff out there. So again, I don't know. We'll just have to see if Saturday's important. Ripple loves Thursdays. Tomorrow's a Thursday. I don't know. Well, just again, with the time frame, I can't call it. It's going to be macro related in the events that drive and be the catalyst for everything that we've talked about. B Magic Studios says, thank you for the super chat, and I like the 2222. They say, hey, Jake, I wanted to tell you about an app or site a fellow Beyond Broke Mastermind, KK Pawn, created called XRP Live. You'd really like it. It's about every metric we tend to look at and so much more. Built for the Beyond Broke Mastermind. He did a great job. Shout out to KK Pawn. I saw him in Vegas for a short period of time, just said hi, gave him daps as he was walking by. But yeah, if you guys want to go check that out, I think it's a fantastic website. I think it has, all the stuff that you need to be looking at. And again, appreciate you bringing that to the public's attention. If you want to join the mastermind and get access to all kinds of cool stuff like this and all the other stuff that the members there create, you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized #1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. And again, I've said this in the past, but I will continue to iterate on it or harp on it. We are going to shut the mastermind down. You will not be afforded access. The prices will go up substantially, and it'll be invite only on the other side of price appreciation when XRP hits at least $10. So if you want to make sure that you're a part of that community, we would love to have you. You can go ahead and go use that code, join through the website. It's month to month, no contract, cancel at any time. But we have about 17,000 people there in the group that continue to pay month over month. Trish She says, hi there. I don't believe XRP will move until Evernorth is ready. Shareholders still need to vote. Takes weeks. So June. It's quite possible that that's the case. I do think that Evernorth will be a catalyst that drives additional demand to be able to buy XRP off the open market. I do think that Evernorth is timed quite well for all of this, but it would only help them if price appreciation happened before they launched. They've already aggregated the XRP. They have 437 million XRP, or maybe it's 473. I think it's 473 million XRP is what they currently custody, and they raised to be able to form that DAT through the SPAC that they have filed for with the S4. They've done a couple iterations on the S4 and feedback from the SEC. So I do expect that they will be launching here in the near future. But it could take till June, like you mentioned, for them to get that off the ground and finally go live. This person says, tinfoil hat around Agora, BIS 1C classification, BIS hub, basement reprice, unwind, and clarity, please. Let's go deep. Not a whole lot of context here. It's kind of piecemealed together. Yeah, if you want to go check out Project Agora, it's definitely a good read. I would encourage people to go check that out. The BIS is definitely going to be involved in classifying these assets here in Q2. They've stated that. So I do expect that we will see a classification for XRP, Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana here in Q2 of 2026. And I don't think clarity is going to get passed at this point. I'm pretty out on it. After the conversations I had at Bitcoin Vegas last week, and then to see that the people are still don't even understand, like not everybody even has the same version of the bill. The markup, I don't think, is going to get done in time. And with midterms and the other things that Congress has to do before they go on their break in August, I'm feeling very unconfident that we are going to see the Clarity Act passed here in 2026, which is fine. Like I've said many, many times, I don't think we need the Clarity Act and for XRP to see the price appreciation that a lot of us want to see. Here he is again. He's a mega legend. Which hot wallet would you recommend for Venezuelan and Cuban holders with less than 2,000 XRP to store XRP? Zaman. That would be the way that I would go if you want a hot wallet. Shout out to Wheatsay. Chris P. Bacon, 589. I love the name. He says, hey, Jedi Jake, do you see a time in the future where someone could simply walk into their local bank and earn yield on their XRP, and how would that affect your business? No, I don't see that coming in the future anytime soon. Again, we talk to all of these institutions, right? Like Fidelity, Goldman, Citi, Bank of America, JP Morgan, you name it. We've had conversations with them. They don't have the infrastructure to support that. If they did, your asset would be commingled with somebody else's. It would not be in your own wallet, segregated, bankruptcy remote, insured. It's likely that they would hold it on their balance sheet and rehypothecate it and do other things with it to pay you that yield. And most people don't want that. There's a lot of exposure and risk in that. There's a very specific way that I believe this needs to be done that is in alignment with the fiduciary duty that somebody like a Digital Ascension Group has for our clients. And we're going to continue to build for that future. And again, like I mentioned, these institutions are not ready at all for this. Their advisors have no clue about what to do with it. They don't have the products to be able to facilitate yield of returns on it. 2 years at a minimum, if ever, in my opinion. And I don't say that to tout our company. I thought the same thing, to be honest with you. I thought banks were going to be all over this. They were going to love retail. They want XRP, for their own circumstances, whatever that might be. And I thought that they would be building products and solutions to be able to help people that wanted those options. They do not care. Like, I am blown away by how much they don't care. It's sad to me. Because I want that reality. And like I said, I thought for a long time that they absolutely would be doing that, and then come to find that that's not at all what's been going on, or even a thought for them. Once the liquidity's there, they'll try to catch up, but it will take them a lot of time. And they, again, the personnel that they have, even if native infrastructure, they aren't building it for the client's best interest, in my personal opinion. Capital Surge, they say, Jake, first, God bless you and your family. Thank you, brother. God bless you. Thank you for the support and kind words. He says, second, is it possible for a new law to be written that says XRP is only allowed to be sold by banks and institutions and not by individuals? Chances. I will say that there are very strong reasons that we advocate for people to structure their LLC and set up a corporation to manage their digital assets. I do believe that there's probably and likely an outcome in the future where it's only going to be those type of institutions or corporations that are allowed to participate based on their credentials in certain ecosystems. I could be wrong about that. Again, self-serving, so take it with a grain of salt. There's just a lot of benefits to structuring your stuff in an LLC if you are holding digital assets, same way you would real estate, to mitigate risk and liability, and then also for creditor protection, anonymity, tax benefits, all those things. So if you want to work with us to do that, we would love to work with you. Go shop it, look at other people to do it. I can pretty much guarantee you that they don't have the same expertise in digital assets and the verbiage or the language that they use in their operating agreement and the other stuff that they do to be able to file it correctly and manage, the ongoing administration of that LLC is not up to snuff with how we do it. But again, there are cheaper options. Not everybody has $1,500 to structure a corporation in Wyoming and do it the right way. So I understand why people would, want to pay less. But if you want it done the right way, you want to work with a trusted partner that's done over 8,000 of these corporations for good people like yourself, you can go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com and go through the flow and the process there. If you want some guidance on that, you have some additional questions, you've got $50,000 to $80,000 in crypto. If you have less than that, I wouldn't worry about it. You can do it later. But if you have at least that much and you want to, make sure you're doing this the right way, you can email us. Just do info@digitalfamilyoffice.io or info@digitalascensiongroup.com, either one. And our team there will reach out to you and answer the questions or schedule a call to be able to answer those questions for you. David, my man, he says top 2% XRP holder, mastermind for a year now. Awesome, dude. He says he loves it. Thank you for the support and the kind words, man. It means a lot. And we're glad to have you there in the community. His question is, will HBAR, XLM, Ondo, XTC have higher than $1,000 token price appreciation and the duration to get there? Out of the ones listed, I think that HBAR is probably the most likely to have a 4-digit price point at some point in the future. Duration, 2030 potentially. Could be less than that. Again, it just depends on adoption of the network and the ETFs and the inflows there to be able to push the price that high. Other financial products built around those. XLM has no financial products built around it. People don't trade it. They don't do perps or derivatives or any of the other stuff. They're just now starting on some of that. I got a tip off about a financial product. I won't mention who or what it is. But one of those 4 may have a financial product launched in the next 45 days. So you pick which one. When it comes out, you're like, that's what he was talking about. I will say it's a leveraged product also. So again, not saying which one of those currencies it is, who it's from, but excited to hear about it today when I got wind of it. But again, back to the question, I think that HBAR is likely the main one would see that over the next, call it 5 years. Kingdom Within, cool name, dude. He says, hi, is there risk of BlackRock buying Anchorage and controlling our assets? We own our dollars in the bank. They are custodians like Anchorage. So very different. We set up segregated bankruptcy remote accounts. What that means is those assets are not on Anchorage's balance sheet. Your assets are your assets. You are never a creditor of Anchorage. We've structured that very specifically that way, and that's the same way we will work with all of the custodians that we eventually onboard with. So no, is the answer. As far as like them controlling your assets, you are the owner of your assets. You control your assets. They are segregated from their ability to do so. They're not on their balance sheet. Separate of that, BlackRock buying Anchorage. I don't think so. If I were BlackRock, I would be building my own custody infrastructure, leveraging Copper or Fireblocks or one of the other instances, maybe even Ripple custody at BlackRock. So unlikely. I think it's more likely that BlackRock buys Ripple than for them to buy Anchorage, personally. We got another question from a man. He says, hey, Jake, do you still think XRP will upload a New Year's? We already went into that one. Sometimes it kicks me up in the chat here. We are already an hour in. So if you haven't put in your super chat, just know I probably won't get to it. If I do miss it, again, you can send it to us on social media through a DM, or you can just follow up via email to info@digitalfamilyoffice, and they will pass it over to me. Actually, that reminds me, I think I have a super chat from earlier in the week that my wife sent me, so I need to answer it. Here it is. KT Baby says, thank you, ma'am. She says, Jake, Vegas was so much fun. So good to meet you. It's great to meet you in person, ma'am. We had a lot of really good people come through last week in Vegas on Wednesday night. And, it's always good to put a face with a name. Like, a lot of people are nice enough to, ask me questions on here, and I know them from their username, but to see you in person, shake your hand, and make your acquaintance was very nice. So thank you for coming through. And again, thank you for being part of the mastermind as well. All right. This person says, Lord, please bring thus about so perfectly for our benefit, reward our faith, obedience, and diligence. I'm hungry for FU money against bad bosses and utility to better serve the kingdom and for others. #hope. Good prayer. Amen. The FU money, like, you just want to be sovereign, right? Like, you want to be able to take care of your family, help other people with the abundance that you have in your life. I think that that's the common thing across everybody that I've met, almost everybody I've met for XRP, is they're not gluttonous, they're not egotistical. They want to do well for themselves and their family, but they have big plans or things that have been put on their heart by a higher power to help others in some capacity. They have a mission based on certain circumstances that they've lived through in their life, or they have a certain cause that they want to benefit or create solutions for. And so I think that's going to be the biggest legacy that we actually get to leave as XRP holders and people that go through this generational wealth transfer that's really never going to happen again. You're going to have an opportunity to walk your highest path and do the most good that you can in this lifetime. So again, that resonates with me. And again, thank you for the super chat and the appreciation and the support. Beyond Thankful, cool name. Thank you for the super chat. Let's see here. We got William, Mr. Kilgore. He says, thanks, legend. I'm going to take another stab at this one. Is the key to the Shane Ellis theory the coordinated trades with specific exchanges? Good try. I mean, that's part of the situation. The crux of the issue is illiquidity on exchanges. So if Tether were to be removed, depegged, sanctioned. People, sell off Tether at scale. Jim Rickards just recently talked about this. Jim's a smart guy. I'd listen to Jim Rickards. He talked about a situation with Tether where, people lose faith in stable coins and a lot of people exit those in a rapid capacity. And it's basically a bank run. And they have to liquidate assets in order to be able to meet those calls. And if they don't have liquid assets like treasuries, and they're locked up in a situation where bonds or corporate credit are not so liquid, probably a bad situation. So that's the situation where Bitfinex would go illiquid and then elect XRP as its primary liquidity mechanism, start routing everything through the DEX and drive the price to, $589, like in the Shane Ellis theory. That would be what I would say is the crux of that situation, would be Tether no longer being a viable option for liquidity in crypto. Infinite Growth, he says, why are you now giving a BlackRock ETF timeframe? I don't think I gave a time frame. I said it makes sense to me that it would come out on a Monday or a Friday. I'm watching closely the next 3 months here to drive liquidity into XRP so that it's ready for July when they're going to tokenize the stock market. You need back-end settlement first. And the president of NASDAQ talked about that last year at Swell. She said the first application for distributed ledger technology is going to be the back-end settlement of the stock market moving to T+0. Now, she was interviewed by Monica Long at Swell. I don't know how much clearer you can get that that's going to be XRP that facilitates that. In order for XRP to get to those prices, in order to be able to sit in a position with enough liquidity to be able to navigate that situation and play that role, you would need a BlackRock ETF to be able to drive that alongside of all the other things that we know are going to happen with the macro. So it seems to me that we're really down to the end of the deal here. In order for that to happen and them to be able to go live with that in July, we don't have much time. We got a couple months. So again, don't take it as like the end all be all. I'm just one guy. I'm just trying to read between the tea leaves and make educated guesses just like y'all. You're entitled to your own educated guess just like I am. My eye is bugging me tonight. We've got Mary. She says, do you hold XRP for C Corps and manage those accounts? We can. Yeah. We could absolutely hold it in a C Corp. I don't know why you would do that though. So I'm gonna give you reasons why I would not hold your XRP in a C Corp. You might have a management corporation that is your holding corp or your management corp that manages the XRP that's held in an LLC. If you hold assets in a C Corp and you're in a lawsuit and somebody takes control of your stock, they can liquidate assets to pay themselves back and then leave you with the worthless stock. If you have it in an LLC, they're equity units. They can't do that. So I don't know what jurisdiction you're in. You may be in Canada, and that's why you're asking that question. But if you are domestic here in the U.S., it's a lot better to hold assets inside of a limited liability corporation than it would be an S Corp or a C Corp that has stock. And I actually have a whole video on this. If you're in the mastermind, you would see the long-term vision for how we're going to work with people to orchestrate their estates to make sure that they're navigating those risks and structured the right way to benefit themselves, in taxes and all the other means. Highly recommend you go check that out. And you would see a C Corp that's involved there, but it's not hold the assets directly. All right. Scrolling on up. We got MDC, or MCD, excuse me. They say, Jake, pleasure meeting you at the Mastermind event in Vegas. Awesome, dude. I'm the guy who asked if I should smile for your picture. Yes, always smile for the picture, my man. What do you think the time frame will be for XRP to begin appreciating if just unwind this week? Well, it needs to save that situation, right? Like the whole point of XRP is there's a liquidity crisis and it is the solution in that scenario. So it can't take too long. They are going to have to move fairly quickly, in my opinion, on the other side of that. Is that immediately? Is it a couple days? Is it a week? I don't know the answer to that. They've been very methodical about how they've rolled this out. but I do think it will be kind of an all at once type situation where there's a crisis reaction solution, and XRP is that solution. We've got GM 1300R. They say, thanks for giving the average person a seat at the table. I really appreciate what you're doing day in and day out. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words and the support. This is all stuff that, like, I've been very blessed, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be in rooms with people that, know more than me. I talk about this in a way where I feel like I'm an Indian outside the teepee, and the shamans come out every once in a while and they share some nuggets with me, and I try to do as much as I can to pass that on to you guys so that you know what's going on. Can't share everything, right? So I share a little bit more in the mastermind than I do here publicly, but at the end of the day, it's a privilege, and I don't take it lightly. And I really do appreciate the people that have shared things with me, and me then having the ability to come, share those things with you. Roughing it. How are you, ma'am? She says, not that I'm thinking about it, because I agree with you. I think that this is calculated and planned. I'm surprised that they're letting you openly talk about this and not suppressing your information. Thank you. I've thought about that a lot. I don't know. I don't know why. Again, really, really blessed to be able to come on here and have conversations and answer questions candidly and share information. And again, I'm speculating on a lot of this, right? Like, this is the thesis that I've put together. It is a theory. Now, many of the pieces of the theory have come to fruition. We have XRP ETFs. The Genius Act got passed. The Clarity Act didn't. The Strait of Hormuz is shut down. We've seen oil jump. And now the Bank of Japan is in a position where they're going to have to move. And, if you look at all those things, batting about 700 on predictions that I've made, I would expect to continue to bat, pretty high on the rest of it also. So I don't know. I think that the powers that be really do want to help people in some capacity. I think the people that are curious and wanting to learn and willing to better themselves and their family and put themselves in a good position deserve the opportunity. But I also think that they believe that most people will squander it. If you gave everybody in the world $3 million and just distributed the wealth evenly, within 3 to 5 years, all that money would be back in the same hands. And I don't say that to be mean or egotistical or derogatory to anybody. It's the financial education component. If you don't understand how currency works, you don't understand how to create value in society, you don't understand how to allocate capital properly, what assets are, what liabilities are, and you don't have that education, then you're going to end up, messing it up. And I think that's intentional. I think that's why financial education is not something that they openly talk about in schools, or how our monetary system works, or what assets and liabilities are. They might, teach you how to balance your checkbook, which isn't even relevant anymore. But outside of that, they don't really do much. And even, I went to school for finance. Everything that I've learned outside of like 3 classes I took in college has been self-taught. And that's coming from, professionals and other people that I've worked with, watching YouTube videos, listening to, audio books and reading books, different publications that I follow, looking at other macroeconomists and other people that are smarter than me that tend to have some blinders on and don't understand crypto. They see a very bad outcome coming, and I just happen to see, because of my purview into this asset class and the understanding that I have, how this can help navigate that situation that's coming. But yeah, I think that they allow me to continue to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it as much as I can so that people know what's coming. Grayson, they say, what's your favorite Bible book? Mine is Revelations. Have you ever had a man? You ain't a man till you've had a man. I don't know what you mean by that. Confused by your tactics. Favorite book? Hmm. I mean, I have a lot of different thoughts on religion and theology and um, all of that. I don't know that I have one favorite. I think that there's a lot of good parables in the Bible, and that's what I think they are. I think they're parables. I don't think that they are direct representations of the exact reality. I think that they put that together in order to be able to orchestrate a theme or what's the word I'm looking for? An idea, so that or a core value or belief for people, so that they would have that to be able to then invest that into their own life and apply those principles. Principles, what I'm looking for. So, I think that they're all good. I think that there are, I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole or not, but I think there's been perversions of the good book, and things have been added and removed over time to be able to sway people in one direction or the other. So I try to take all of that into account when I'm reading it. But I do believe it. I believe that just certain people have perverted it in certain ways. So hopefully at some point we do get to see the actual, original version, King James, like from the 1500s or earlier, the Bible. KT Baby, she says, so good to meet you. Mr. Shook and crew are amazing. Awesome, man. I'm glad you had a good time at the event. It was really good, like I said, to see you before. And yeah, we have a lot of fantastic people in the mastermind. So again, if you want to join, if you want to be around good people, we would love to have you. Just go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, or the abbreviation for month. Get you the first month for $2 there in the group to try it out. We got Freeport Lawn Care. They say, thank you from a small business. We dollar cost average $100 a month. We listen to you while we work. Thanks again. Thank you. That's cool. If I'm able to help just one person, like, that makes all this worth it. Our goal in the mastermind is to help 1 million people become financially free. I don't know that I'll ever be able to impact 1 million people in my lifetime. But I'm hoping that, over multiple generations, there are that many lives impacted by people finding this and, taking action, learning all the things that they need to learn, and then being able to apply those principles, core values and beliefs, and be able to disseminate that, and then change the lives and opportunity that their next generation and multiple generations are going to have. This person says, no disrespect theory, but anyone group government that is fighting against it happening? Yeah, for sure. Why do you think Ripple was sued? Why do you think? I think a lot of this stuff was ready to go in like 2020, maybe even 2021, and things changed. And to your point, people were not happy about that direction, and they decided to balk at it and try to prevent it. And eventually they just back themselves into a corner where it's the only option that they have left. I think we're pretty close to that. Anthony, he says, hello, legend. Great speaking with you Monday night. Appreciate the time. Rocco, hey, good to see you, dude. If I do a trust, would that avoid a state exit tax if my state implement an exit tax after price appreciation and I want to move to a non-income state? If it's California, they're going to get theirs. New York's probably the same way. So I would do it prior to that. They do have like a 10-year clawback that they're trying to implement, and I already have been going after people that have moved out of California and New York. So the sooner you start that time clock, the better. But yeah, moving it into a certain type of trust and getting it out of your name and gifting it, you would have to gift it out of your taxable estate. It shouldn't then be applicable for them to be able to come after you for it. But again, I'm not the end all be all. I would talk with a tax attorney or a really good tax planner that's an estate planner and navigate that situation. Um, so don't quote me, but that's my best guess. John says, "Hey, legend, wait for it. Dairy." Set up an LLC with Laughlin last quarter, and they're now reaching out to conduct my first quarterly compliance call. Would like to convert to DAG. What do you suggest? I just download the app and pay. You should have a renewal fee if you want to go ahead and do that. If you don't want to do it, you can. You can just move on to the app. And we're building in all of the corporate veil services or the the corporate shield or whatever you want to call it through that application. So I wouldn't worry about Laughlin. I would just download the app, move your stuff over, upload your EIN, set up your account. We'll send them a notice that they are no longer providing the service, and we will provide that service moving forward. And we will honor any purchases. It's not like you got to pay more. Trap Sleep says, "Appreciate you, brother. You keep us all motivated." Thank you, man. Today was a long day. Was up at 6 a.m. here in Florida. Went to multiple events today, worked all day long, and I'm still here. It's almost 10:30 Eastern time. Actually, 11:30 Eastern time, excuse me. Christ is King. Love it. God is good, man. What will come first, the second coming or price appreciation? Price appreciation. But really, when can you expect this and how many digits trying to achieve financial freedom and bless others? You're watching the macro, man. Everything that I talk about on here, the 10-year, we haven't even looked at that in a little while. So we'll go ahead and pull that up. If you want to Google JPY 10-year yield, I like the CNBC version of it. We're at 2.9. We've seen some big moves on the 2-year for both the U.S. Treasury and that Treasury there in Japan. If that's when the rotation is going to happen, when it becomes more lucrative to hold Japanese bonds than it does U.S. Treasuries, or even that gap becomes very close, that's when you're going to see that rotation start to happen. And that's when everything else is going to pan out, like I've talked about with the price appreciation of XRP, the BlackRock ETF, and all the other catalysts that would push the price to where it needs to be to facilitate back-end settlement of the stock market and de-risk when that situation transpires. David, he says, "Mastermind almost a year now. Love it." Thank you, dude. We love having you in there. In there twice a week. We have a call, depending on what level of the mastermind you're in, every single day. Different other people run those calls. We have other professionals come in there and talk about a lot of different things, whether it's insurance, estate planning, mitigating taxes, credit, different types of investments, how to do due diligence, really just as much financial education as we can provide people there in that community. He's asked me the same question as I answered earlier. So we'll go ahead. Maybe I've already moved up here in the chat to the point where I've got back. Nope. XRP Maxi, he says, "Jake, interestingly, if you Google world's new bridge currency, it says XRP immediately. The balloon is about to pop. May, June is our time." I think so. I think, again, I'm watching these months very closely here for, all the macro catalysts that I've been talking about. And it's been that way for a long time. If you Googled global bridge currency or world bridge currency, even back in 21, it came up with XRP. This person says, "Evening, Jake. I'm taking a 3-month pay cut starting in July. I have $9K in savings. How can I get a monthly return off that to help my second job I'm getting? It won't be enough working extra. Thanks, man." 9K in savings ain't going to do it, my man, or my lady. If you haven't invested in the right stuff, there's a potential in that time frame that you could be in a very different financial position. Potential. Not saying absolute. You should not make any financial decisions based on my recommendations. I'm not a financial advisor. However, I think there's a potential in the time frame that you mentioned that you could be in a position, if you invested that the right way, where you could, have enough income to be able to offset, the transition out of your current occupation. Zebu Meat. They say, Jake, why do you think Ripple spends time and money interacting with XRP Army if their end goal clients are banks and institutions, billboards, etc.? Seems like a gimmick. I think they genuinely do want to help retail. I think that, they love the XRP Army. We've helped them get to where they are in multiple applications, whether it was the 7,500 people vouching for them in the lawsuit with John Deaton, or the liquidity that we've put into the asset through the exchanges so that they could trial the network. None of this is possible without retail. And I think they know that. And so they want to show appreciation. However, apparently David Schwartz talked about them migrating toward a retail-facing client when he was at XRP Vegas. I haven't heard that speech. If somebody has seen that or it was recorded, I would love to see that. But all that being said, I have felt helped in doing what I'm doing, not directly by Ripple, but certain people in the ecosystem that may be tangentially related to them. And somebody had to do it. Somebody had to build something that allowed people to, make sure that they could maintain exposure to XRP and generate income off of it, be able to borrow against it in a safe way, structured and regulated. And, Ripple isn't focused on that right now. They're focused on the institutional adoption, because that's what we need to see the, significantly higher prices. And I think that they're very close to that. And with the acquisitions that they've made and everything, all the moves that they're making, seems like that's pretty close to done. David Schwartz has talked about the mission being complete a couple times, and that's why he retired, and stepped away. And now he's on a board there at Evernorth and some of the other things that he's doing. But yeah, I don't think it's gimmicky. I think that they troll. When you have enough money to troll, you troll. To see them in the background of every single photo at Bitcoin Vegas, I thought was very, very funny. But yeah, if you look at Oracle, if you look at other B2B plays that are institutional, they also use advertising campaigns, and they're on billboards, and they do a lot of Microsoft early on. Once you're established and everybody knows who you are, you don't have to do as much as that. But Ripple is pushing, pouring gas on that right now. And I do think that, maybe that's in order for them to get public exposure, because they might be going public at some point in the future. Steve, he says, hey, Jake, if you are so confident in a high price XRP, why are you working so hard to build a business? So, just openly, right? My mission in all of this isn't to become super wealthy. I don't know if you've ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I think that there's really 4 tiers for people. First tier is survival. Most people focus on that. Their time horizon is week to week, month to month. They don't normally see much past that. And that's what they focus on. So that's what they get. If your focus is status, which is the next tier in that, then you want to keep up with the Joneses. You have credit. You probably have a higher income paying job. You might live in an affluent area, but you have an ego and you want to look good next to your peers. And there's nothing wrong with any of these, by the way. I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I'm just talking about the 4 different tiers here. The next tier is freedom. Those people don't tend to own a whole lot of assets. They value their time. They have longer duration stuff that they look at, 5-10 year timeframes, and they tend to have significantly higher paying jobs. They're often entrepreneurial. They want to create value in society, but their ultimate goal is to be able to go and do and spend and be with whoever they want, whenever they want. The 4th one is purpose. And there are very few people that actually have a strong enough purpose or a large enough goal that they can really build something in society that creates crazy value and get fulfillment from that and give back to society, right? Like, so that's what I focus on. I focus on purpose. The business is a block in the rung of the ladder, or rung on that ladder, that allows me to get to that. My purpose is to advocate for the little guy. I want to sit on boards. I want to know what's actually going on in the world. I want to be in a position where I can affect change and like have the information to be able to help and get this back to where, you know, everybody has opportunity. So in order for me to do that, if you understand how the world works, you need relationships, you need capital, you need clout, if you will, or respect from your peers. It's not just like, you know, and I always go back to my dad on this, but when he was upset about the world and how it is, and they're taking our data and the government's not doing what they should be doing, he was like, you need to call your senator and you need to get off Facebook. And I'm like, they don't care. It's not an impact. Like, your one account on Facebook doesn't matter. You calling your congressman when you didn't lobby for him, he doesn't care what you think. He's going to file your note away and not even think about it again. You have to have a presence in order to actually affect change in society. And so this is a piece of that for me. And I get to do a lot of good along the way. I get fulfillment from coming on here and answering questions and helping people. And I get to create value, right? So that's what it is for me. The money in the business is a byproduct. You know, if the business was the end all be all for me, I would have stayed CEO. I promoted a CEO. I'm chairman, right? I've built a team of people that can execute on this. They run the operations. They do all the compliance. They do all the things in order to be able to make sure that this is done the right way for people like myself and everybody else in the XRP family. And my goal is to transcend this and be able to actually, you know, help make decisions that are in the best interest of the public and people, so that they continue to have opportunities on the other side of the implementation of blockchain and AI and all these other things that are coming. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's a means to an end. It's not the end for me. Reggie, he says, Godfather. What's up, big man? The IMF only gives the government 9 interventions on their currency every 6 months, and Japan did 4 times already in the last 5 days. When that ends, is it game time? Keep up, plays. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier in the live. I do think that they are running out of runway here in a very short period of time. They're not going to be able to continue to intervene in the currency market without the IMF stepping in, and I do think that that's going to be cause for them to raise interest rates. How many strikes do they get? We'll just have to see. U.S. Marine Corps, Mr. Luke, he says, howdy, sir. What the shamans say. Thank you for all that you do. The shamans say that things are moving along. I'll say that. Bob Dylan says BIS, Project Agora solution versus ODL for reverse carry trade. I think they're one and the same, to be honest with you. Honest Dan, good to see you. He says, Mr. Legacy, hi to the tea lady. Thanks for all you develop and create for us to take advantage of. You're always cover questions that I want to ask. Wife and I thought wife and I tonight are just sending a truckload of flowers all your way. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Excited to have you helping us build some stuff out there for the mastermind and provide additional value for all the members there. Yeah, excited to be working with you finally. Roughing It, ma'am, she says, hey, or hi, can you please elaborate on what you mean by Japan has stepped in 4 times already recently? So if you want to look at the yen versus the USD, you can see big drops in actually it's appreciation of their currency against the US dollar. They're doing that by manipulating the currency. either through selling treasuries or by selling dollars against the yen or buying yen with dollars. And they're doing that in large sums to be able to move the market. That's what I mean by intervening. They're using yield curve control on their bonds. That hasn't worked. They're backed into a corner. They don't have any options left except to raise interest rates, and that's the last thing they want to do because they know it's going to unwind the carry trade. Until we have stablecoin regulation here in the U.S., that would cause a Mad Max scenario. The total financial system would collapse if they do it now. But once we have that regulation by the OCC, we will be able to move forward. Anubis XRP. They say, legend, can you talk about JP Morgan Ondo Ripple relationship? And second, bullish new partnership with Ripple. How does all this help XRP? I'm running on fumes here. JP Morgan, Ondo, and Ripple. So Ondo is partnered with Biddle and BlackRock for tokenization of treasuries. They've also rolled out tokenized stocks. JP Morgan has Onyx as their infrastructure. They have a bridge through Axelar to these other ecosystems, including the XRPL and Ondo, to be able to, facilitate the trading of tokenized RWAs, treasuries being one of those. And then Ondo obviously settles those treasuries through the XRPL, which I talked about earlier. The EVM sidechain is what I think JP Morgan needed in order to have interoperability between the XRPL and their ecosystem, leveraging Axelar. So that's kind of the ecosystem there and how that works and the different parties and what they're doing. And I haven't read enough on the bullish partnership with Ripple to be able to speak to that directly on this, but I will go do some research and get back to you. All right, we got Kingdom Within. He says, hi there. Oh, I think we got through all of the super chats. So I'm sure that there's more here down at the bottom. I did tell people to quit, but I'm going to try to grab a few more before we wrap it up. We got Brandon. He says, legend. How to grow your wealth post-price appreciation. How much control will central banks lose once blockchain tech is rolled out in mass? They won't lose any control, I don't think. They just won't have control over XRP, right? So the Fed won't have the control that they currently have today over other countries. They won't be able to implement sanctions and affect monetary policy. Will also, be sovereign, where we don't have to do things that are in the interest of the rest of the world that might be in the disinterest of the people here domestically in the U.S. based on monetary policy to make sure that, things are okay in the status quo, and that won't be leverage anymore. So you could look at that as loss of control if you wanted to for the U.S. But I think the U.S., dollar-denominated stablecoins are going to continue to push the dollar to, be one of the highest used currencies and continue to sit in that position, along with some of the other large countries that are coming up, China and Russia and a few others. But how do you grow your wealth post-price appreciation? Very carefully. Yeah, you want to navigate risk well. You want to educate yourself. I think a lot of people, and I've used this analogy before, but like a dog chasing a car, you don't know how to drive it. You might run yourself over. It could be a problem. But if you could educate yourself on how to drive that car before you caught it, you could see a dog driving a car, right? It's a weird analogy, but that would be where I would spend the next 6 months of your time post-price appreciation. Maybe borrow against it, sell a little bit, put it in a very safe, conservative yield product for 6 months. Use that additional liquidity and time to really educate yourself on all the financial information and business resources out there to make sure that you can be successful in managing that, and align yourself with the right professionals so that you're getting that guidance and can learn from them. That would be the best way to grow your wealth post-price appreciation. And really, you wouldn't even be looking at growing your wealth. You're already in the boat that's going to continue to do that over time. If you're in digital assets, you're in crypto, and you're in the right ones, that part's the easy part. They're going to continue to gain adoption. They're going to continue to appreciate in price. Kind of set it and forget it. Just know that it's going to work for you, right? It's how do you leverage that and make sure that you don't mess it up. It's about capital preservation and then growth beyond that. So, I think you're in the right place. I think you're in the right boat if you're here. And I would just continue to educate yourself and make sure that you're not making poor decisions, and make sure that, that you're aligned with the right professionals to make sure that you're able to navigate that until you are self-sufficient. And I don't think you're ever quite self-sufficient. There's always blind spots. I have blind spots all the time. That's why I have the team that I have around me, because they're able to see things that I can't. They bring things up to bring it to my attention. I'm always the eternal optimist. And, sometimes there's oversights. And I think that's true for everybody. So that would be my recommendation if you want to continue to grow your wealth and preserve your wealth on the other side of, the liquidity event that we are anticipating. All right. Tired Men 02 says, I need to see you talk/argue with Ben McKenzie. Don't know who Ben McKenzie is, but I don't really want to argue with anybody. I'm happy to have an informed debate and a conversation, but not arguing. We got Devin Taylor. I'm not sure if it's a fellow or a lady, but I appreciate the super chat. They say, are you taking summer interns? Have you ever hired an intern for a full-time position? 5 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, vet, just finished my bachelor's in business finance, minor in political science. Would be an honor for an opportunity. We actually just hired all the interns. We filled those positions for the summer. We've done that. We've had probably, 20, 25 interns at the company. We pay well for interns. We have hired a couple people that have been interns at this point over the past 3 years. We've been running that program for about 18 months for the internships at this point. And so, again, you can apply, but I think they have currently already hired everybody. We have a lot of inbound on the interns that want to come work here that are currently in school or have recently graduated. Sean says, wanted to say, God bless you and your family. I believe he led me to hear from you. Should I get an LLC in Canada? Cheers, brother. You should not get an LLC if you're in Canada unless you intend to move to the US. LLCs are not recognized as pass-through entities in Canada. You will be taxed here domestically in the US, and then again there in Canada unless you move here, because Canada's residency tax-based. So I don't know what your intentions are post-price appreciation. If you intend to stay in Canada, I would work with, Aaron Grinhaus or another professional there that can help you make sure things are structured based on Canadian tax law to help you to navigate that on the other side of price appreciation. We got Southern Betrayal. They say, does swap lines help or hurt the dominoes? You need scalability on the XRPL, so payment channels, an implicit or explicit subnet, trust lines, and all of the other, potentially batch payments. If that ever gets passed, it's deprecated at this point. I don't know that they're going to bring it back or not. All those things definitely help the scale for payments and throughput on the XRPL. We just did that one. I think maybe we got through all of the super chats. So I am going to go ahead and wrap it here. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to come hang out with me and ask great questions. If you want to work with us to set up the LLC, if you have at least $50,000 to $80,000 in crypto, we would love to work with you. All you do is go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com, and you can go through that there. Again, if you need help, if you have questions, it's just info@digitalfamilyoffice.io or info@digitalascensiongroup.com. Both of those channels will get you to the team that can help answer those questions and help you navigate the setup of the LLC if you're new to it, or if you're going to migrate an LLC over, be able to manage your digital assets. If you want to work with us on the wealth management side, all you got to do is go to digitalwealthpartners.net and go to the contact us form. If you have at least $100,000 in crypto, we would love to see you over there. You can get a financial professional to talk with you, somebody that's licensed, has a Series 65. They can give you financial advice, which I can't do here on the channel. And then last but not least, if you do want to join a fantastic community, have in real life events, get access to private deal flow, and have the best financial education that I think is out there on the market, we would love to see you in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. The code, if you want to check it out at beyondbroke.com, is Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, each of the first month for $2 there. Again, month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. If you want to try it out, most people, tend to stick around. They do enjoy it. I think we provide a lot of value there for the price point. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, a wonderful night. We'll see you on the next one.